Hi, and welcome back to Glassboxed, writing automated Java tests. Today we're going to have a look at the page factory pattern. We will look at what the page factory pattern is, why someone would want to use the page factory pattern, and how to implement the page factory pattern. Now, before we go into the page factory pattern, it is important to note that you need to have a good understanding of the page object pattern. Now, I have already done a video on the page object pattern. It's the 7th video in this video series of WebDriver. Just have a look to get a good understanding of what the page object pattern is, what is used, its kind of advantages as well as its disadvantages. All of that is discussed in that video. So I'd advise you have a quick look through that at the very least. If you do have a good understanding, then yeah, go ahead. So what is the page factory pattern? Well, what the page factory pattern does is it allows us to more closely map web elements on a page to the classes that we create. So for instance, say if we take these links like the home link or the other link or this terms link here or various texts, it allows us to map that data much more closely to an object we create inside a class. So to demonstrate the page factory pattern, I've written a really basic test which uses the page object pattern, and all the test will do is it's going to click on the home link, and then it's going to come to the contact link, and then when it's back on the contact page, it will then click back on the home link. So there's only 2 steps to the test really. Load up the website, click on contact, then click back on home. So let's have a quick look at the test that I've already written. So I've divided the test in 2 logical places. First we have a page package which contains my pages, and then we have a test package which contains my test. So if we have a quick look at the pages first, so I've got an abstract page. All it does is it creates an instance it houses the instance of a driver, and it has a method to just navigate to the web app, and it returns a new home page object with the driver instance inside it. Then we have a home page which does pretty much the same thing, but here we're just clicking on the contact link by looking for it via the name locator, and then returning a contact page with this driver, and the same thing for the contact page, but here because when we're on the contact page we want to return to the home page. In fact, that should be home page. Now if we have a look at our abstract test classes rather, so I've got an abstract test driver. Doesn't do anything magical. It again just has an instance of driver, and we have a before method where we instantiate the driver object, and we're going to use Firefox, and then in the after we quit. So what that basically means is before every test we'll create a brand new Firefox window, and then after the test is done we'll close it. And the actual test itself, well, we are creating a new home page and we're passing in the instance of driver which we're inheriting from the abstract test driver, and because this is a test, the before method runs first and creates the driver. We then navigate to the web app, i.e. we go to this method, we just go to the web app, and then we go to the contact page which is on the home page. So if this seems confusing already, let me say why. So when we go and invoke this method returns a home page object, which is why we go to the home page. And then on the home page, if we go back to the test, we then, when we're on the home page, we navigate to the contact page and then back to the home page. So this is just following your normal convention rules of page object pattern. It allows us to map various things to our page objects without having to refer to it directly in our test, making our test look a little bit more cleaner. So if I did this, for instance, this just kind of it almost reads off like plain English. On home page, navigate to web app, then navigate to contact page, then navigate to home page, and so on. So let's just run this test just to make sure our test is running. So right click, run as JUnit test. So it's opened the browser, clicked on contact, and then it clicked on home, and it closed. Okay, fantastic. So let's have a closer look at these page objects. So let's have a close look at the home page object. In fact, no, let's have a close look at the contact page object. Now, if we have a closer look, at the moment we have a single instance of where we try and click on the home link. So again, let me show you quickly where I'm grabbing this information from. So if I just do an inspect element here and look at the HTML, so its name attribute has a value of nav_home. So that's where I'm getting this information from. Now let's just say this is fine because on that page we've only got the one link, and it's really likely we'll only use it in one method, like here for instance. But let's just say over time our test starts, this page object rather, starts building up. Let's have a quick look at the contact page. If we have a look at this contact page, these links are kind of trivial, but this form, because we use page objects traditionally to write tests, we don't really use page objects for anything else. Not really. There's nothing stopping you, obviously. But let's just say we wanted to write several methods for this form. Let's just say we wanted to write, and I'm just going to do this in comment form because I don't want to kind of go into writing the methods. It's kind of outside the focus of this video. But let's just say we were going to write a method, something along the lines of populate form with no errors and submit. So what this method would contain is effectively a driver find element for each of these fields, including the send button, in which you'll click the send button. Now, in our test, let's just say that was it. That was the requirement for this form. Whatever the requirement came through for this particular page, the only requirement was we just want to make sure this form populates without any problems, and we are able to send the data off. Now let's just say somewhere down along the line a new requirement for this form comes in, where we're asked that we now need to write a test for each field. So what that now means is we actually will need a couple more methods, because we won't be able to use the information inside this method anymore. Remember, any driver instances you have where you find an object, because the scope of it is within the method, it cannot be used outside of the method. So that means any locators we use to find our fields inside this method cannot be used anywhere else. So we end up almost duplicating that information in other methods. So let's just say we then had to write a method for fill in name field, and then another method for fill in address field, and so on. You can see that these fields, the driver locators used to actually grab this information, can actually be duplicated in different methods. So the reason why we write page object isn't just to provide a much cleaner access to these locators, it's also to try and reduce code duplication. But on the other hand, if we end up having to write multiple methods to access the same web elements, it kind of almost defeats the purpose. It kind of almost makes it pointless in writing page object. So kind of thinking along those lines, this is where the page factory pattern can be used to further help us grab this information in a much more elegant manner and also reduce code duplication. So I explained what the page factory pattern is. It allows us to better link these objects that we have in a class and more kind of strictly relate these objects to page elements. And the way we do this is this. What we do is, instead of doing something like this where we have driver.findElement by so on, so on, so on, so on, we will instead create a web element here. And in this case, it's going to be a name, or rather it's going to be the link to the home page. So we're just going to call it homepage link. And here, instead of doing all of this, we're going to say homepage link. So now if we run this, to all those kind of savvy programmers, yes, this is going to throw a null pointer error. Bonus points to anyone who can guess why. The reason why it's going to throw a null pointer error is because this hasn't been initialized. We're just kind of declaring a web element and we're trying to use it right away. We're not actually instantiating it. So before we kind of go into trying to solve that error, think about this for a moment. If we had a means of doing it this way, where we say homepage link, and then we use a homepage link in this method, and then we use it in, say, this method, and this method, and this method. If we need to make a change, theoretically we can only make the change here, and that change would be inherited by any instance of where it's used. So far I hope you're kind of following me. This is kind of theoretical information for the moment, but that's kind of the basis of how the page factory pattern works. It allows us to instantiate an object just once in one place and use it in various other places. So I see the page factory pattern as an extension to the page object pattern. Now, to actually do this, we need to use an annotation called findBy. So this annotation allows us to directly link in information from the HTML page source and effectively inject that information into this member variable we've declared, and also automatically instantiate it for us. So going back to this annotation, in this annotation we're going to say findBy, and in this annotation takes well, it's an overloaded annotation. It can take different parameters. So the one we're going to use first, the one which will probably make more sense to you, is we're going to tell this annotation how to find something, or what to look for rather. So we say how is equal to how dot, and if you have a look here, it's now looking for various types of what are known as how enums. Now if you look carefully, you should be able to see that these hows, CSS, ID, link test, name, they look very similar to locator methods, don't they? So if I picked something like, say, the name, now what this is going to do is this is now going to look for an attribute of type name on the page that we're currently on. We can then give a value for this, and to provide a value for this we use the using argument, and we provide a value for this in the form of parameter, and the value we're going to provide is, what was it called? It was called, I think it was called nav underscore home. Now you're going to get red lines because you need to import in the necessary libraries, so it's the Control Shift O automatically imports. So what's happened here? Well, what we're doing is, to reiterate what I just said, we're using this findBy annotation to tell the JVM when we run this class is that we are trying to fish for this attribute of type name, which is using a value of nav underscore home. When you find this source, inject this information into homepage link, which is a web element, and at the same time instantiate that object. So if we run this test now, we still have a little bit more cleaning to do, but if we were to run this test now, this homepage link will now be instantiated with the object, but we haven't provided any driver.findBy locators or any of that kind of dressing. This is now handled for us. The one other thing we now need to do is, when we return, we can't return a homepage object, because for this information to be compatible, we need to now return what's called the page factory class. Now the page factory class is effectively WebDriver's take on implementing the page factory pattern. Now to use this, all you do is we say page factory dot, and we go init elements, and in here we can pass in the instance of driver. So when we pass in the instance of driver, this driver's instance is passed to whatever class we want to pass it to, and the class you want to pass it to is a class you declare as a second parameter. So in this case we want to pass it to homepage.class. Why do you want to pass it to homepage? Because that's what we're returning here, homepage. So now what's happening here is we're fishing for that information, we're putting in the web element, and then we don't need to instantiate it anymore, it's done for us. We click on the link, and then we return to, well, the test returns a homepage object with the driver instantiated inside it, alongside the acknowledgement that this object is now using the page factory. So now let's just duplicate this information for our other page objects. So I'm going to do this really quickly. In fact, let me just copy this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this information onto homepage, just so that I can be a little bit lazy. So here is going to be the contact page, and here we're going to say contact. So if you notice, I'm grabbing the same information. Here is being the locator that's being used is name, and we're looking for nav underscore contact. So I'm doing exactly the same thing here. So here, all I can say is just copy that in, and go in and copy this in as well. But this time we're going to return the contact page instead of the home page. And the final place we need to do it is here as well. So some of you might be saying, why are you using it here? You're not doing any find bys here. So if we were to compare, you're doing a find by here, and you're kind of returning this class as a page factory, which makes sense. But here you're not doing any of that. Why are you using a page factory return here? What's the point of doing that? Well, like I said, whenever you return an object, you need to tell that the object is part of the page factory. So if the first method we call the navigate to web app, so if we have a look at our test, navigate to web app, which navigates to the web application, we need to make sure that we're passing it in as a page factory. All of our page objects now are using this page factory pattern malarkey, and nowhere have we said directly driver.find this or driver.find that. So assuming if this works, this means that if we ever need to say create an access to these fields, all we'd have to do is declare a new web element object, annotate it with the required annotation, and then use the member variable in however methods we want without having to worry about going and changing in every single one individually. It's kind of done for us. So anyway, let's run our test and see what happens. Well, there you go. It passed with flying the single green color. So what have we actually done? Well, we've removed our bindings of using the driver locators and instead introduced this magic where the bindings are done for us. We do need to provide it ourselves, but the instantiation is done for us. We don't end up with null pointers. All we have to do is just pass in this page factory instead of just passing in the page with the instance of driver inside. So I mentioned that the find has multiple well, it's overloaded, right? So instead of doing this where we say how is the name and then we're using nav underscore, you can just say something along the lines of this. That will do it as well. Ideally, if we now go to here, if we have a look at the other possible enums we could have used, so we've got others. We've got name here, we've also got ID, we also have partial link text, we've got tag name, we've got XPath. So there's a lot of options. We're not just restricted to just using a couple. So here let's just use name, sorry, let's use ID, and I'm gonna have to go and fish for this ID. So the ID we want is, it's going to be on the home page, and the ID is going to be for the contact page. So we're going to go to the home page and we're going to try and fish the ID for this, and the ID for this is contact underscore link. So here's a prime example. Let's just say we were using this member variable in about 4 or 5 different methods, and we were using the driver's locators binding. We'd have to go and change it in every single place. But here I've only changed it in one place, and that's automatically done for us. So again, let's just rerun the test just to make sure that this change in ID, because you never know, in the real world you may need to change the type of attributes you're looking at. So this change in ID and the fact that we're kind of using the shorthand of just using name with using the how and the using. Let's run our test and see what happens. and it passed again. So in this video, all it did was we removed the driver locators. Instead, are using this find by annotation, and instead of returning a home page with an instance of driver as a parameter passed to the constructor, we're using page factory and one of its methods to pass in the instance of the driver we're using along with the class that we're using. So effectively we've almost removed a line of code and introduced potentially 3 lines of code, but these 3 lines of code reduce duplication immensely. Naturally, if your page objects are really small, there's probably not a lot of effort in doing this, but if your page objects are massive, then there's a lot of value gained by doing this. So I think we've actually learned an important mechanism we can now use in building more maintainable frameworks to write WebDriver test automation scripts in. And that's it for this video, folks. If you enjoy my video and find they bring you some new knowledge or insight into writing WebDriver tests, then please subscribe and rate. If you have any questions or video suggestions, then yeah, please leave a comment below. Many thanks for watching. Until next time, ciao.